to my channel. I'm George from Ireland. So looking at this situation in Severodonetsk, this city in Ukraine, which has become the vortex of the war, been under very heavy Russian bombardment for about 3 weeks now. And the Ukrainians then east of the Severodonetsk River, sorry, west of the river rather, have built supposedly unassailable defenses. I don't know what they are these days. Are they anti-tank ditches? Are there anti-personnel mines, anti-tank mines? I'm not sure. Barbed wire, is that even a thing? I've never been a soldier. But so the Russians, they thought they'd taken Severodonetsk because they'd just been raining all sorts of shoddy on it. But this is the problem with the Russian approach, is they squander so much in terms of munitions that they're expending it faster than they can be resupplied, and logistics have always been a headache for them. Um, and exaggerations of Severodonetsk, there have been exaggerations of Severodonetsk fall, or rumors of its fall are much exaggerated, to paraphrase Mark Twain. So yet again, just as in Mariupol, the Ukrainians have held on much longer than any of the pundits forecast, which tells you something about their will to fight. Um, and the Ukrainians have actually even retaken some of the city not long ago. The Russians claim to have 90% of the city, but they've been pushed out of it a little bit. Now the Ukrainians claim that the Russians had set the date of the 10th of June to take the whole city. Today being the 6th of June. So if the Ukrainians can hang on even till the 10th of June, they will claim some sort of success. Anyway, so it's been very slow progress, and it seems that Russian activity there is slowing down. They're becoming exhausted, they're running low on ammunition, and they're struggling to provide food, fuel, and anything else there. There's not that much to seize off the local civilians, I mean, most of whom are fled. There are a few elderly people. The Ukrainians have been unable to provide humanitarian aid to their own people for a few days because the bombardment has been just so intense. Shells falling all around. It was too dangerous to go out in the streets. So it's all very worrying. And so, can the Ukrainians actually push them back? I mean, I don't think they can actually, but I would love to be proven wrong yet again. And the thing is, these HIMARS are being sent out by the United States and the United Kingdom. Now, Putin warned NATO countries not to provide these. It will be pouring fuel on the fire, said Dmitry Peskov, his press spokesman. It wouldn't actually be putting out the fire, which Russia deliberately started by repelling the aggressors. No, it's not aggravating the situation to help this victim defend itself from this murderous tyranny that is trying to quench the flame of freedom in Ukraine. But obviously, because Russia could put out the fire today by ending the war, withdrawing, stop stealing, don't take what's not yours. Just recognize Ukraine as a sovereign state, as you already did. Just start obeying international law for a change. But anyway, I don't think it's remotely likely. So this is just raising costs for Russia, making it more painful, make it slower going. But the trouble is, it takes about 3 weeks to train these people, the HIMAR things, and the announcement was only made a couple of days ago. Now, the United Kingdom is giving some, and the Ministry of Defence won't be drawn on how many. There's a rumour of the British media there's 3 of them. Now, the British military only has 42 of these systems. They're obviously unwilling to provide so many that the United Kingdom would feel that it's not adequately armed. Obviously, those 3 that it's dispatching to Ukraine, as that number is correct. The UK can purchase another 3 to make up for that, but you can't get them like that. They can't be reduced that fast. I mean, if I was in charge of a NATO country, I'd be taking a bigger gamble and providing a lot more of the arsenal, thinking the chance that we're going to go to war before we get these replaced is pretty low. Ukraine needs them now. There's a 100% chance that they need them because they're at war. And so Russia is, in a sense, the United Kingdom's enemy. Is not actually in a state of war, but we know that the Russian Federation is extremely hostile to the UK, has carried out murders on British soil of indeed British citizens, has hacked it in all sorts of ways, sees the UK as a potential foe, and on and on. Now, I don't want there to be any such war, and I don't want the Russo-Ukrainian war to carry on, but I'm afraid to say Russia as a state is 100% responsible for that. And not that Ukrainians are entirely innocent. Obviously, there are bad Ukrainians, just as there are many good Russians. But on a state versus state level, there's no question that Russia is in the wrong about this. You look at the ruling of the International Court of Justice on this one. The only such time a state has been ruled to be fighting an illegal war. Anyway, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, he warned that providing these longer range missile systems to Ukraine will mean that there will be a response, and that then Russia's going to hit more targets in Western Ukraine. Well, they're doing that anyway, and they're doing it as much as they already can. They're not going to make it more intense than they otherwise would do. I mean, they're not known for their self-restraint. They in fact really have no restraint, willfully killing civilians on a huge scale. At least 4,000 civilians have been killed in this conflict, and I know even a morally good army that strove to avoid civilian deaths would kill some in collateral damage, but this killing civilians. Anyway, so the Russian Black Seas fleet is already going to stay over 100 kilometers off the Ukrainian coast because some of these anti-ship missiles have been provided to Ukraine, and these ones furnished by Denmark and others mean that the Ruskies dare not come too near the coast, otherwise their ships will be sent to Davy Jones's locker, and their warships were providing important fire support to the Russian land forces. But anyway, although there is some good news around Severodonetsk for Ukraine, the situation is still very serious. Even President Zelensky said Severodonetsk and nearby Lysychansk are now dead cities because so many people, civilian and military, have been killed there, so many buildings have been destroyed. If the war were to end today, it would take at least several years to properly reconstruct these buildings. So anyway, the Ukrainian troops in Severodonetsk are vowed not to surrender. Now, we've heard that in Azovstal before. Difference, I suppose, is partly in Azovstal they were surrounded. Severodonetsk, they're not. They do have a way out. So, and the Russian offensive is slowing down. I suppose they think they would take Severodonetsk and that would speed it up. Well, no, they'd have to get across the river. So there've been all sorts of problems for the Russians. So I think any hope of a quick victory is really gone for them. Then there's this grain issue because Ukraine provides sort of at least 10% of the grain in the world market, at least 10% of the wheat, 42% of all the cooking oil used in the world. So as many 75 million tons of grain might be stranded in Ukraine this autumn, which they would usually ship out, raised at 5 million tons per annum. And yes, it is by ship from various ports. There's only one Ukrainian port still in their hands, Odessa. And the idea of sending it overland is really not going to work. They can send a bit of it overland, but the overland transport capacity is much more limited. Also, their train systems are incompatible with the European rail gauge. Suppose you can put it in those big containers and take it off one train onto another or something like that. They're talking about, anyway, if they can send it by train to even Romanian and Bulgarian ports, ship it out from there, ship it out from Poland or something, that would be something, but that still wouldn't be as efficient or as cheap as doing it directly from Ukraine. And so the Ukrainian economy is really going to tank. It's going to shrink at least 45% this year due to Russia. It's going to cause starvation in some underdeveloped countries. So anyway, but when these HIMARS arrive, when the Ukrainians are sufficiently trained in them, and they're going to start to use them, that will be a game changer. I'm not saying that will mean that Ukraine wins the war, and even if it does, it's not solely for that reason, but it will certainly help. They will be able to hit Russian targets up to 80 kilometers away, and they're more accurate than the Russian equivalent. So even with numbers and a technological edge, Russia could not really hold its own. When the technological edge shifts in Ukraine's favor, then Russia's going to do rather worse. So that means their artillery being taken out, their tanks, moving some of their infantry, is going to mess up their logistics. They'll be able to blow up bridges, tunnels, even the trucks, the trains themselves. Any large concentration of troops will be highly vulnerable to the Ukrainians. So I suppose that's one of the reasons why the Russians want to make as much progress they can now, so that they can't be, if they're being driven back towards the frontier with Russia, that's more difficult. There'd be further to drive them back. So yeah, that's how things could start to tilt towards the Ukrainians. But yeah, this war is not going to end anytime soon. It is a bit worrying from a Ukrainian perspective that France, Italy, and Germany have said, should we negotiate? This can't be outright victory. Even Biden has said that the goal is to put the Ukrainians in the best possible position when it comes to negotiations, rather than outright victory, which is maybe showing a certain lack of commitment. And that's what Putin is banking on. The Western countries are yellow-bellied. They will soon tire. These high oil and gas prices is easily to intimidate them. He can terrorize people, as he does at home and in other countries. So sadly, that strategy might actually bear fruit for him. Thanks for watching. Bye.